Hello, it's Martin from Wisely Automotive, and if you've been following the channel for a while, you will probably recognize this location. It's because we are picking up where we left off with the Audi A2. In that video, we looked into the history and found it to be a very good predecessor to our beloved i3. However, times are changing and you have to realize even the i3 is now part of the history. So, what if you're looking for something with similar characteristics, but you are buying or leasing new cars like many people in the UK do these days? Well, that's where this comes in. There is no denying that there is nothing quite like the i3 on the market, other than perhaps the i8 with lots of carbon fiber construction and an overall structure which is unlike anything else. But the ID.3 still has a couple of interesting quirks. Yes, all of these panels are metal, other than the tailgate. That's actually plastic and is blacked out just like on the i3. However, if you don't believe me that these cars share some design principles, let's just zoom out so you can look at dimensions. Obviously the ID.3 is a little bit bigger, in fact 25 centimeters longer, but 20 centimeters of that goes to the wheelbase, which means you get a lot more interior space. And in terms of height, well, they are practically identical, giving them that slightly inflated MPV look, which again is there to maximize the cabin space for the footprint. This is no coincidence because in 2015, after BMW was done with the development of the i3 and the i8, the boss who was in charge of the BMW I division, Herbert Diess, left and became the CEO of Volkswagen. Supposedly he poached a few engineers along the way as well. The interior of the i3 we know and love, and for very many reasons. Most importantly, it's a compact car with a properly high-end interior and lots of space, which Londoners appreciate. Now please, do not judge this example too much. We can't show many details because this one has just arrived. In fact, all the cars which were prepared have basically now sold, so they are definitely going hot. But yeah, nice interior, lots of recycled materials on the dashboard, different textures, and this, keep in mind, is the base model, but you still get lots of nice little touches all over the place. Importantly, it also fits people into the back, but there are compromises. The big one being that it's a strict four-seater, so there's no middle seat in the back with no seat belt. And secondly, there are ISOFIX points for child seats, but obviously only on the outer rear seats. There's nothing in the front. Which brings us onto the situation in the ID.3. The airy theme is present as well, especially on this family trim which has a full glass roof, unlike the i3 which optionally has very small two portholes at the top. However, let's be honest, there is a noticeable drop in quality. There is a lot of hard plastics, especially up on the door cards and in the middle console. But the important bit is that the touch points like the Captain style armrests and the steering wheel are nicely upholstered. The layout is also strikingly similar. The floor is very low down with the low down center console, giving you lots of legroom, and that gear selector, that looks like it was lifted directly from the i3. So why compromise on the quality? Well, it's because of the space in the second row, and there is no comparison, I'm afraid. Lots more legroom. The seat base is also a little bit longer, so it's more comfortable on long journeys for adults. There is a similar amount of headroom, and importantly, a third seat in the middle. This is because obviously the ID.3 is actually quite a bit wider, about 10 centimeters wider than the i3. So there's a slight compromise on city maneuverability and the ease of parking. It's still very good, which I will show you later in the video, but it means that you get a much wider cabin. Also, if you have lots of kids, there are ISOFIX points on both rear outer seats, but also on the front passenger seat. That practical note extends to the boots, because not only is it much bigger in volume compared to the i3, with a little caveat, there is no frunk on the ID.3, unlike the little one you get on the i3. This was again done in an effort to really maximize the cabin space, as a lot of the air conditioning components have been moved under the bonnet, and that means that unlike the i3, which has a very high boot floor, the ID.3 in this family trim has a false floor with a lot of space underneath, and underneath that is one more layer with a cubby big enough for your charging cables and your essentials like your tire repair kit, for example. On top of that, if you need to carry bigger objects, you can obviously fold the seats down. This being a 3-seater in the back, they fold in 60-40 split. And if you need to carry skis or snowboards, if you're going to the Alps, you have a ski pass-through option as well, and you can still comfortably sit 4 adults in this compact vehicle. You may be doubting the ID.3's credential as a pure EV because next to the i3 it looks a bit too normal, but rest assured these are both bespoke electric cars with a rear-wheel drive layout with motor under the boot floor. This means that the front wheels can turn a lot, so especially in urban maneuvering scenarios, it makes driving these cars in town conditions and squeezing through traffic an absolute doddle. Yes, the ID.3 is a little bit wider, but it's still manageable and it's small by modern car standards, so with restrictors do not pose a problem. The differences start to grow the moment you get out of town, because while many people really push the i3 and thanks to the relatively flat charging curve take it on long trips, it really is designed as a city car first, whereas the ID.3 with the longer wheelbase, wider track, feels much more at home even if you do lots of miles on the motorway. And this is a topic we get asked about all the time for people who are in the market on the i3, especially because with those cars you've got the choice of the more daily comfortable i3 and the more sporty i3S. But the sportiness doesn't only mean extra power, but also a more stable ride at higher speeds and, for example, on twisty roads. With the ID.3 you get that perfect German combination of both. It is soft enough that if you go over speed bumps, manhole covers, potholes, it feels comfortable. You can feel the imperfections, but they are never intrusive. You never get shocks in the cabin. Whereas on the motorway, it's far from wallowy, and even at 70 miles per hour, it's whisper quiet in here. It's so much more refined, probably in part thanks to the more traditional framed instead of frameless doors. But nevertheless, it just makes a much better long-distance car, and that's before looking at the range. I have to be honest though, it's not all perfect, and it's especially in the city where the i3 still excels. The ID.3 uses a different braking system compared to the i3. If you press the brake pedal in the VW, it's the computer deciding how much regen to apply and at which point to blend in the friction brakes. This is called blended braking. And as much money as these manufacturers are putting behind these more modern systems, in my eyes there's still nothing quite like a direct link to the brakes themselves. And secondly, it's the lack of one-pedal driving. It's something the i3 pioneered, and yes, in this ID.3 you can choose between automatic regen in drive, or you can go into B mode. And while obviously it's nice that you have a choice, the maximum strength in B mode is still very lukewarm compared to the strong regen you get by default in the i3. There's also no way to disable the automatic creep, so the car feels like a standard automatic petrol engine car, where if you let go of the brake pedal, it will slowly inch forwards. So with the ID.3 being aimed a lot more mass market, I understand that it's a lot more familiar for people who are jumping in from a petrol or a diesel vehicle, but to us it feels like BMW got the tuning right the first time round with the i3. And while we can have a debate about what you prefer, as the driving dynamics are largely subjective, there is something where we just can't deny facts, and that's the world of technology and gadgets, because that's moving super quickly. So while the i3 has all the essentials in a modern car, like your heated seats, you can have them with reversing cameras, etc., the ID.3 just takes all of the optional equipment to a whole another level. This, keep in mind, is still a mid-spec family trim, and it has things like high-resolution matrix headlights. All ID.3s in the UK come with radar-based adaptive cruise control, which means that it doesn't get blinded when you're driving into a low sunset. There will be a video on that, about how that performs on the i3. It is a real issue. On the inside you get customizable multicolor ambient lighting, standard fit heated seats, a heated steering wheel, and any of the higher trim levels get even more gadgets, like for example fully electrically adjustable seats and a massive augmented reality heads-up display. And despite VW getting a lot of bad press for terrible software, there are many features which are missing on the i3 which are crucial for a new electric vehicle owner. So for example, if I open up the navigation system and I put a destination in which is very far away. We are currently on 70% state of charge. The car will calculate the route to Glasgow in this case, and it obviously shows you that you need to take multiple charging stops, and it plans that entirely for you, so you don't need to know anything about electric cars. And also crucially, when you pop open the side panel, it tells you exactly with how much battery percentage you will arrive, how long you need to stay, and then which charger you move on to next. A bit like Tesla, which we have gotten used to. But if you are new to EVs, this just gives you that much more confidence to do longer trips, whereas with the i3, while the range prediction tends to be quite accurate, you need to do most of the planning yourself, or you at least really need to know what you're doing with the sat-nav and which preferences to take. If you are not a fan of the built-in system, you also have wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, so regardless of whether you are an iPhone or an Android user, you are covered. And if you think the world of computer is moving fast, then you need to check out the world of batteries. Because since the i3 stopped production, you could get these ID.3s with massive battery packs in comparison, up to 77 kilowatt hours of usable energy, and even this middle one with just 58 gets about 50 to 70 miles of additional real-world range compared to the i3 with the biggest battery pack. And when the time comes to replenish that range, those rates have gone up as well. This middle 58 kilowatt hour battery can get up to 120 kilowatts of peak charging power compared to just the 50 on the i3, and the biggest 77 kilowatt hour pack gets up to almost 180, allowing you to really minimize the number of stops you are doing on your long journeys, and this truly can be a single car solution. And as you know, it's not only about outright battery capacity but also efficiency, and while the ID.3 doesn't use a lot of those exotic materials like carbon fiber to keep the weight down, it still gets awfully close to the i3. It's by no means a scientific test today, but in the morning when we left Bermondsey, we reset both trip computers. And if you look at the results, the i3 achieved 4.0 miles per kilowatt hour, whereas the ID.3 is really close behind at 3.6 miles per kilowatt hour. Let's wrap this up back from the i3, because yes, we have slagged off some of the technical aspects a little bit, but that's just a matter of the times evolving. Truthfully, the i3 is still the i3, and yes, it bobs a little bit when you push it around on some twisty roads. Yes, it doesn't have the best range compared to the latest and greatest electric cars, but you can almost forgive it because it's part of the i3, and it's those quirks which make it this characterful, lovely, adorable little city car. Super responsive and nippy around town, and I can guarantee that every time you will step out of one, even after years of ownership, you will be smiling from ear to ear. Whereas I'm afraid after 6 months of having run the ID.3, as efficient as it is in terms of transporting you from A to B without any fuss, it doesn't quite have that little something which the i3 has. So where does that leave us with the ID.3? Well, we have to be honest, it's not quite a second generation of the i3. What it is, however, is a fantastic, more grown-up alternative to the i3. So for example, if you have loved your i3, but you started to push its limits and it's spending a lot of time on the motorways outside of its comfort zone, or your family has grown and you need a bit more interior space, then this absolutely is your answer. It still has those elements of the i3. You get a long-range vehicle with a compact footprint. And that's where I'm going to leave it. If you have missed the Audi A2 video, make sure to check it out in the top right-hand corner. And if you want to learn more about EVs in general, make sure to subscribe. Thanks again for watching, and see you in the next one.